Welcome everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about three important topics related to immunity, that is transplantation, graft rejection and autoimmunity. First, we will see what is the transplantation process. So during the transplantation process, we will transfer the living cells, tissues and organs from one part of the body to another part of the body or from one individual to another individual. So this process we call it as transplantation. So during the transplantation, we need to remember three terms. The first term is graft or transplant. So during the process of transplantation, the cells, tissue or organ which was transferred from one part or from one individual to another, this organ or cell or tissue, we call it as the graft or transplant. The second term that we need to know is donor. The individual who provides the graft, that is, who donates the graft, we call it as donor. The third term, that is recipient or host. So recipient or host is the individual who receives the graft, who accepts the graft. So these are the three important terms that we need to keep in our mind to understand the concept of transplantation. Now we will see the need for transplantation, why we need to go for this transplantation process. So God has given us all the basic cells, tissues and organs for our function. But the problem is when any of the cell, tissue or the organ has a damage or it's not doing its function properly, then we are in need for this transplantation process. Nowadays, many people are in need of this transplantation of different organs. So that's why this transplantation process is becoming very necessary and crucial in nowadays. Now, we will see the different types or methods of this transplantation. Broadly, this transplantation can classified into four types or four methods, that is isograft, autograft, allograft and xenograft. So if you see this image clearly, it shows or depicts what these four types of transplantation methods. The first one, in autograft, from one part of the body to another part of the body, when we transfer some amount of cells or tissues, we call it as autograft. For example, when there is an acid burn or when there is an injury in your face, you can take some amount of tissue from your thigh region or from your arms and we can replace in your face. So this process of transfer of tissues or cells from one part of the body to another part of the same person, then it is called as autograft. The second method or process, that is isograft, here between and genetically identical individuals, if we do this transplantation, then it's called as isograft. So basically when we say genetically identical twins, they refer to the monozygotic twins or the people within an inbred strain. The third type, that is allograft. So this is the most common type of transplantation that we are talking. Here it occurs between different members of the same species. For example, a heart transplanted from a person to a small child. This is an example of allograft. The last type, it's like very rare, it's called as xenograft. Xenograft is the transplantation occurring between members of different species. For example, if we take an organ from a monkey and we replace it in a human being, then this process is called as xenograft. So these are the four common methodologies by which a transplantation process can occur. So when we talk about transplantation, what are all the applications of this transplantation or this graft or transplant? So nowadays, majority of these organs or tissues are being transplanted. For example, eye transplantation, cornea transplantation. It's like huge taking place. For example, every year around 40,000 transplantations are occurring related to cornea. Likewise for skin, for lungs, for heart, for liver, even for bone marrow, transplantations are happening. And due to the kidney injuries or kidney failure, the kidney transplantation also is now getting increased. And for pancreas and even sometime blood transplantation also can happen. So likewise, the transplantation happens for different organs and different cells or tissues in our human body. Now, I am going to introduce you into a new topic, related with transplantation called as graft acceptance and graft rejection. So what is this graft acceptance and graft rejection? So we know what is a graft. So graft is the organ or tissue or the cell which is going to be transplanted. So if the recipient possesses all the antigens present in the graft, then there will be no immune response. So we have already studied in immunity, that is the T lymphocytes or the T cells will take care of differentiating between the self and non-self antigens, as well as whenever there is a introduction of new or foreign cells or tissues or organs, then this T cell will do an immune attack. So to avoid it, we will be using immunosuppressant drugs. So these things we have already learned in the videos where we covered the T cells. So here in graft acceptance, we need to choose the graft in order that all the antigens will be available with the recipient. So only in this case there will be no immune response. So when there is no immune response, there will be no graft rejection, which means the recipient body has accepted the graft from the donor. So here it doesn't need to be even a syngeneic one. So even in a non-syngeneic case, this can happen. So this process of accepting the graft in the recipient, we call it as graft acceptance. The opposite of it is graft rejection. So graft rejection is basically our body's immune system not accepting this graft. So this graft rejection can happen in 4 methods. The first one is hyperacute rejection. That is, within a minutes to hours, this rejection will take place. The second one is accelerated rejection. The third one is acute rejection. That means this rejection will be there for a month or so. The last one is chronic rejection. Basically, for lifelong or for years, this rejection is going to be taking place in our body. So this is graft acceptance and graft rejection. So now we are going to see the next topic related to immunity, that is autoimmunity. So we have seen our immune system, how it fights against the pathogens and the foreign invaders. But what if the same immune system attacks our own body? That's what called as autoimmunity. So autoimmunity is protection of autoantibodies and autoreactive T cells. So when these autoantibodies and autoreactive T cells start attacking our own host cell, then this process is called as autoimmunity. So there are different autoimmune disorders existing. Those cases where autoimmune process contributes to the pathogenesis of the disease rather than the situations where apparently harmless autoantibodies are formed following the tissue damage, we call it as autoimmune disease. So the very common example of autoimmune disease is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So we will see the basic difference how this is happening. For example, if you take the normal immune response here, an invader like a virus or bacteria, whenever it enters the body, our immune cells, that is like lymphocytes, create antibodies to fight this foreign invader. So this happens in a normal human being. But in few cases, the immune system creates antibodies that can attack our own cells. This sometimes happens because a foreign substance sometimes resembles bodily substance. So in that case, the antibody produced against this foreign substance will also damage our own cells. The second reason why it can happen is because the normal body cells becomes altered, or we call it as mutated. The third reason is when our lymphocytes, that is T cells and B cells, become malfunction and make abnormal antibodies. So due to these reasons, our own immune cells can't differentiate between self and non-self and start producing these autoimmune diseases. So there are different autoimmune diseases available based on the type of cell or organ it was like attacking. For example, in brain, if the brain cells are attached, we call it as autism or multiple sclerosis. In thyroid, we have thyroiditis or Hashimoto's disease. In bones, we have rheumatoid arthritis, which was like the most common type of autoimmune disorder. Then for muscles, again, we have polymyalgia rheumatica. Likewise, in skin, we have eczema as well as the scleroderma. In lungs and nerves and gastrointestinal tract, and even in blood, we have all these organs and tissues. So making up, there are more than 100 different types of autoimmune disorders that can happen in human beings. So our immune system is like a very complex system. Okay, if it's not doing its function properly, we will be falling sick. If it's doing its function more than the normal, again we are going to fall sick. So our immune system has to be functioning in a normal manner. Then only we will not be falling under any disease. So with that, we come to the end of this immunity related topics. In the next videos, we are going to talk about few diseases and how our body is fighting against it.